The practice interview line with Reverend Shokai is now open. These private conversations are to discuss anything practice related. Koan students are welcome to discuss their practice, but not present koans. Please raise your hand if you would like to have a practice interview, and please keep your hand raised. Thank you. When you're tapped on the shoulder, please follow me out of the zendo to the interview line. The Dokusan line with Doan Sensei is now open. If you have not had Dokusan with Doan in the past month and would like to, please raise your hand and keep it raised. Thank you.
Please be seated for tonight's talk. Please sit comfortably and thank the teacher and the class. We'll be reciting that of the Sutra on page 8 of the literature.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Before I address the sutra, I'd like to call attention to the fact that we're now in our fall Ango training period. And for those who may not be familiar with the term, it comes to us through our Japanese tradition as they inherited it from the Chinese, from its origin in the Indic practices. It refers to a season of intensification. So if you bring your attention to the calligraphy in the back, you can see it there, Fall Ango 2024. There's an Enzo, which the chief disciple created for us at the Sunday service. And if you notice in there, you'll see many names. And I'd invite you, if you feel so moved after service today, if you haven't already, to add your name also to the list of those who are finding some way to intentionally deepen their practice of the Buddha Dharma over this next phase of training. And if you do, you get a prize. You get a nice, cool, red Dharma bracelet. Don't you want the precious? You know? So a priest or postulant can bless this and give it to you. And these red threads are symbolic of the bloodline of the lineage of the ancestors. Those who've received Jakai, you will know on your Jakai document, there's the name of all the ancestors connected by a red line. It's the same on transmission documents. And this is a manifestation of this as well. But also, significantly, it serves as a reminder to yourself. Fairly innocuous. You can have this with you throughout most days, I would say, and in most places and circumstances it would go unnoticed. You're not making a big pin, a headdress or something. It's discreet enough, and it helps you remind yourself of your practice, and also significantly, it helps your fellow Sangha to remember. Today at the Abbacy meeting that we had, which we have most days, I was strengthened by the fact that most all around the table of leadership were all having these threads to remind each other that it's time to dig in and grow up a bit. So here we are. Please consider it. I offer it to you and encourage you. No one will be checking up on you and rating your commitments or anything. So I am very pleased that Doan Sensei, and by the way, you'll need to get used to the term Doan Roshii here pretty soon, but for now, Sensei has completed her discourses on the Gateless Gate. This is quite an impressive feat to actually systematically go through and give Teisho on every single case in the gate. Was my last request for her as a final sort of proof of concept, if you will, to sort of preface the Inka Shomei recognitions, which we're all very excited about. And again, I really hope you'll be present for that. It's a singular moment in the life of the community, and I don't want to overstate, but it'd be hard to overstate how important it is. So please be a part of this. Now this evening, I shall continue on with the Lankavatara Sutra, my self-inflicted wound of some many months now, and I'll see if I can push the dagger a little deeper here into myself. Okay, so the Lankavatara Sutra. This is finishing up the chapter, The Attainment of Self-Realization. Interestingly, as I was preparing the talk, this text is said to be the essential text that Bodhidharma brought with him up from India into China. And Bodhidharma is widely recognized, universally recognized, not contested, the founder, if not literal person, then the founding sort of movement from which Zen arose. And probably he was actually a dude, we think. So this text is really at the core of the Mahayana Zen Buddhist tradition as it evolved and unfolded. So, then Mahamati asked the Blessed One, saying, Blessed One, is the purification of the evil outflowings of mind, which come from clinging to the notion of an objective, self-existent world, an empirical, self-existent soul, is this purification gradual or sudden? Is this purification, is this enlightenment, is this awakening, is this gradual or instantaneous? Now, to those who've been, reading or swimming in the Zen waters for a while, you may know that this sudden versus gradual business, it has ripples that go through pretty much every unfolding of the Dharma. Many of us here in the West encountered the Buddha Dharma first through the Zen tradition, simply by fate, I think, and chance. I mean, our conflict in the Second War with Japan led, as these things do, to a cultural interplay, certainly not the first between the Western world and the Japanese and Asian worlds, but in a particularly devastating and intense way, we got connected with each other, like it or not. And so a lot of the Zen masters from that time came to the West, bringing their understanding of the Dharma and their practice. Mind you, this is well before the cell phone and the Google search and any of this stuff. So a lot of the lineages of the Dharma began coming to the North American sphere to propagate and disseminate the teachings of the Dharma as they understood it. And many of these lineages had not been in contact with each other for centuries and centuries and centuries. I speak now of the Chinese lineages, the Tibetan lineages, the Sri Lankan, the Thai forest tradition, and so on. And so the way this came to us, the way we heard it from the popularizers of Zen in the West, the early pioneering folks, is we encounter this sudden, gradual kind of question, kind of wrapped around Rinzai or Soto Zen, you see. The Rinzai being characterized as the school of sudden awakening. Here you have the koan held up as the primary training device to sharpen the Zen eye of the students. And the koan has things to it that say, you'll shake the heavens and startle the earth at once. Beautiful, grand, poetic image, and frankly, it's not much of an exaggeration. Kensho is a real thing, and when it happens, it's intense, whether it feels like it in the moment or not. And then, of course, the great contrast with this is the Soto lineage, the Soto Zen sect, I guess you could say. Here we have the practice of shikantaza, traditionally held up as the main way of training Zen. And in the famous words of pioneer to the West, Suzuki Roshi, he's often quoted in the Zen Mind Beginner's book, which is a great example of sort of this Soto gradual approach, saying that, well, awakening, it's like getting soaked very gently and very gradually by going out for a walk in the fog. You don't quite realize it, but very reliably and gradually, your clothes are getting soaked through and through. You don't notice it, though. So Rinzai throw you off the high dive into the deep end, and Soto go for a walk in the fog kind of idea. Now, when I first started training in the 80s, these stories were oft told, oft repeated, and in the particular lineages that I trained, they had both Soto and Rinzai teachings going on, but these Soto Dogen or Rinzai Hakuin kind of dichotomies were held up. Turns out it's really a false dichotomy. It's actually really not an either or situation. Not at all. In fact, the Lankavatara Sutra goes into great depth in the next few paragraphs, spelling out quite clearly, right from the very beginning, long before anyone had heard the term Soto or Rinzai or invented it, how these things actually function, this distinction between sudden and gradual, gradual and sudden. Now, understanding how this sort of falsely presented as I'm making a claim, how did that come to be? It's kind of an interesting rabbit hole to go down. I think a lot of folks would prefer to just not know. But you know, willful ignorance is rarely an ally. True not knowing is one thing, but keeping yourself willfully kind of in the dark is something else altogether. You know, when you perhaps meet a person that you find compelling, inevitably what's happening there is there's mystery to this person. After all, you've just seen them from across the room, let us say, you know. And so because they're such a blank slate, you can go ahead and project all your fantasies and hopes and ideas on that person. And because you don't know them very well yet, they seem to apply. You fool. And it's a nice thing, actually. But one of the things that happens as a relationship matures, of course, is that those facades need to give way to something a little more substantive, something a little deeper, something a bit more reliable. After all, you're not capable of living up to your own fantasy life for yourself, let alone anyone else doing that for you, right? So the same thing with Zen practice. Many people come here, visit or otherwise, and have a projected idea that they don't realize there's their projected idea about what this whole thing is. After all, they've read some Alan Watts. They know it, you know. And they've spent a few quiet moments at home now and then. They're experts, you know. But really, I think having the facade come off and look plainly at the history is actually really informative and actually really helpful. After all, let's be very clear about this. Religion is a human thing. It's something that humans do, like art, poetry, music, landscape, architecture, politics, currency. These are human things. So humans through and through. It makes them no less miraculous and sacred, by the way, if you see it right. So this split between the Soto and the Rinzai, from whence did it come, this split between the sudden and gradual? Well, it's important to have at least a cursory understanding of the history of the Meiji Restoration. So this is something that occurred in 1868, just a little bit before this temple bell was built. We think probably this is solidly 1880, 1890. So in the Meiji Restoration era. Of course, it was preceded by the shogunate. You've perhaps seen the series, the new one or the old one, Shogun, right? Talking about how the Tokugawa Ieyasu became the shogun. That shogunate happened from about the 17th century to, well, 1868. It's a long run. And you see, at that time, you can think of Japan as kind of like Afghanistan. There's all these warring warlords that have their little areas and they kind of contest with each other, you know, pretty intensely. And the shogunate is kind of the one to rule them all, the big mob boss that bring all the little mob bosses under their control and try to stabilize things, let's say. So what happened there was that Buddhism was very aligned with the shogun. Often politics and politicians see religion as a useful way to cohere people and control them. No different here in this case. So Buddhism was very associated with the shogunate. And Zen practice was very popular at that time, had a lot of shogunate state support, which turns out is a very, very risky business. This theocracy stuff is dangerous, you see. So everything was cooking along nicely enough, and then Commodore Perry shows up. The West knocks on the door. Hey, anybody in? Anybody in? Let's trade, you know. And then began the importing of Western ideas and Western culture. And there was a predictable backlash against that, you see. And so this Meiji Restoration was an attempt to consolidate, a successful attempt, I shouldn't say attempt, it was a maneuver that worked, to consolidate political power with the emperor rather than with the shogun. The emperor had always been there as sort of a, you could say like a royalty figure, something like the royal family in the UK. King Charles doesn't actually decide anything. He's kind of a figurehead, for better and worse. And the Emperor of Japan occupied a similar position, let's say, more ceremonial, not really deciding anything. Well, when the encounter with the West occurred, Japan said, oh shit, we've got to get we can't just be a bunch of warring provinces held under control by an iron fist. We've got to actually get together for real. And so this Meiji movement was an attempt to create a national identity, a nationalist movement, a populist nationalist movement. You know, we're not this clan or that clan, we're Japanese. Thus, Buddhism became out of favor instead of what became more popular as Shintoism. Shinto, you may know, is the indigenous shamanistic animist sort of practice that is native to the Japanese people, you could say. If one is born Japanese, they would say they're born Shinto, they're synonymous terms. Now, when this occurred in the shogunate's era, there was a syncretism that occurred, where in Buddhism and Shinto, they got kind of hard to tell apart. Everyone's friendly, it's all fine, it got mushy, you know. And the Meiji Restoration, with this influence of Western ideals and the threat of colonial takeover, frankly, they said, no, we're not doing that. It's pure Japaneseness, Shinto. I don't think I'm overstating. Someone might be able to correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. And when that occurred, this new religious foundation of a new nationalist populist identity, which was not native. You know, like in this country, there was a time when people felt, oh, I'm Irish, I'm Italian, I'm French, right? And then somehow we became white. Like, it's kind of like that. They used to think, well, I'm from this clan or that clan or the other clan. Well, now we're Japanese. And it was a shift that later would become hard to contact, just the way things are. And in that shift, then, there was a rejection of Buddhism. And, you know, inevitably, as Buddhism came under the wing of the shogun, it accrued a lot of resentments because the shogun was like a warlord figure, right? And so the official religious practice, there's a lot of wounding there, a lot of bruising, a lot of problems. And so when the Meiji Restoration came along and there's this reform thing going on, there was a lot of enthusiastic wrath that came down on the Buddhists. Aibutsu Kishaku, it's called. There was a rash of anti-Buddhist violence across Japan at this time. Thousands of temples burnt to the ground, folks killed. There was an attempt by the populace really, it was all associated with the old government, you see. And this is one of the great dangers, you know. If your practice becomes officially sponsored by the state, it is very dangerous. Because frankly, states come and go all the time, right? Political parties and movements and powers, they come and they go. And if your practice gets closely identified with one, it'll get wiped out. It happened way earlier when the earlier Buddhism in India went from being kind of a village-friendly practice where the monastics would daily go into the village with their begging bowls and connect with the villagers and receive food in exchange for chanting and teachings. That changed. The Raja, the royal, the king of India, supported Buddhism and gave them monasteries and universities, and then this gap between them and the village started to happen. And a generation or two later, and the Buddhists are way off up there in something like an ivory tower. And the villagers aren't connecting to them at all anymore. And then when the caliphate comes in to try to take out the Raja, then the Buddhism Nalanda University is an example of the royal power that needs to be burnt to the ground, and it was. History is full of this stuff, filled with it, nothing new. So in this case, to go back to this moment in time, eventually they realized, well, you know, we had this Danka system, which is where in the shogun's time, the Zen temples were the place that the village family would register births, marriages, deaths, migrations, travel. And after they kind of had their initial purge, they thought, you know, maybe this would be not so bad. This could be useful. And then it swung back. A deal was cut. They made a deal. Shinto is Japaneseness. Japaneseness is Shinto. The emperor is a kami, is a deity, and so on. But Buddhism was granted official recognition. Zen was granted official recognition. And from the Meiji government's point of view, it had to do with, well, we can use this to control people because they do have those multi-generational lists of who's who and where they are. This is kind of a good thing for us to keep. So tell you what, you can exist, but and now your priests can be married, can have kids, can have meat. And that little decision was really motivated because the Meiji folks were trying to secularize and remove the status from the Buddhist clergy at the time. Thus, the Shinto folk would seem purer and clean and true, closer to divinity. And the Buddhists were, so they thought anyway, the way this would work out is that the Buddhists would become less of stature because after all, if you've got a family and a kid, well, you're no different from anybody else. See? Backfired a little bit. Turned out to be a great boon to the vocations, and I'm really glad I can be married and have some meat and have a kid. So these funny twists and turns, right? But one of the deals that was cut, you see, salient to our conversation here, actually, the emperor said, well, okay, really, it was the Meiji government, let's say. They said, all right, well, we'll cut a deal with Zen, but look, we want to keep this as simple as possible. We're going to just, all you different groups, we're just going to make you one thing. And the Zen leaders at the time said, oh no, this is horrible. It'd be like the government saying that the Baptists and the Catholics and the Greek Orthodox and the Calvinists, you're just the same thing now. And so the elders of the moment got together and said, what are we going to do? Well, you know, and they all knew each other, by the way. I mean, they really did. That's why I'm saying this sudden and gradual thing is kind of a false thing in a sense, because they said, well, look, we've got to figure out how do we differentiate. They said, I know. We'll be sudden, you be gradual. And they did. That's exactly what they did. They said, well, look, a great emperor, a great government, noble, wise. You can't put us together because this is the sudden school and this is the gradual school. And that's why we need to maintain our own identities. And they're like, yeah, whatever, fine, sign here. And so that happened. That's like a historical thing that occurred. Isn't that funny? But see, if they didn't accentuate the differences, they would have been forced to come together. And as obviously good as that might sound, it really wasn't, because there are different teachers with different strengths and different practices and modalities, and they feared that it would all just get homogenized. So this distinction between sudden and gradual became emphasized. Now, as generations go on, people forget that that's why. Like, they just forget. They don't know. You grow up and this political scuffle at the Capitol happened in your grandpa's day, and who knows what it's even about. But today, here's the Shinto shrine and the Rinsen and the Soto sect and the Obaku and everyone else, and that's just how life is. And of course, the successors in those lines have an obligation to maintain the party line to keep themselves like existent, or so they think. And so as time goes on, you end up with these hard and fast delineations. It's very human, isn't it? It's extraordinarily human. But the Dharma is not. The Dharma is something universal. It applies to objects clashing around in the Oort cloud, in other galaxies and cosmoses at the micro and the macro scales, and all manner of sentient and insentient experience and non-experience, really. Reality itself. Gravity is not a human thing. The strong and the weak gravitational forces are not fictions. Neither is the Dharma. Every once in a while you have to frame it to make it workable. But let's be clear, the Dharma itself is beyond all of this political intrigue. So all this gets us back to the initial question. Oh my God, it's 9 o'clock. Am I supposed to be done at 9? Lovely. Tune in Sunday. Is it true I'm giving the talk on Sunday? Yeah. So what I'll do Sunday is I'll be less professorial and historian and more. Huh?
It's not true.
What's not true?
You're not giving a talk on Sunday.
I'm not giving the talk?
either.
What's happening on
The
Sunday?
monks are speaking on Sunday.
Oh, the monks are speaking on Sunday. Oh, God help us all. Okay. The Four Noble Truths. All right, well, the next time I have the chance. But let me just give a very, very fast, real, way too quick version of this, just so you're not left hanging. The sutra goes on to say that there are 3 different areas, okay? The evil outflowings that come from thirst, clinging, and attachment. This is greed. The evil outflowings that come from illusion of mind. This is misperceiving the nature of reality. And the good non-outflowings that come from awakening of noble wisdom. And very simply said, the issues that have to be worked through, and they do have to be worked through with greed, misperceiving the world and clinging, grasping, becoming attached to things. This, the sutra says, requires restraint and effort and very gradual, consistent eroding of the problem. The sutra likens it to one who learns to make pots, or to do comedy, or to dance, or to play the lute, or to write well, or any other art form. It is acquired through restraint and effort, gradually. And the sutra says this is so, not it's so for me. Well, not for me. No, this is how it is. That grasping and clinging, this is a long haul, folks. Don't be surprised, okay? Now the other one, the evil outflowings that come from illusion of mind, this is more, the sutra says, the fear and the anger kind of sufferings. And this is also gradually purified by study, koan study, I would say, or just study of the sutras and meditation. These things both require joyful effort and patience. Not just for some, but not for others, but just a fact, like gravity. Okay, I push the book, it drops down, not up. These things take time, and it is based on restraint from engaging in the thing, and patience and joyful effort through time. It's immutable, it's true for everybody. And this non-outflowing, as the sutra calls it, of realizing noble wisdom, the realization of prajna wisdom is instantaneous. It's immediate. There's nothing gradual about it. He said it's like a mirror. It just reflects everything. Maybe to make it a little clearer, imagine you're at a restaurant. You go in, and you don't know it, but it's just a huge restaurant. You've never been there before. There's just tons of people, and you're sitting there enjoying your meal, and you're amazed at the massive space, you know. And then you look and you touch, and suddenly you realize that, oh, geez, this whole wall is a mirror. And as soon as you touch that mirror, you suddenly cognize instantly how the space is half as big as you thought. You get it? So as soon as you contact that mirror, you go, oh, these are just reflections in the mirror. Oh, so that's instant. So that prajna wisdom is immediate. Now, it's not like that for me, but not for you. That's how it is. And these three areas, you could say greed, anger, and ignorance, need to be dealt with exactly correctly by everyone who practices. And that's why you'll have some teachers that are maybe lean into this or that approach. You know, our Lam Rim teachings from the Galup lineage are very clear about the stages of practice and the need to restrain from the silliness and the self-harm and other harm, and gradually eroding the tethers of this bondage and suffering. And our koan line is like, let's see this right now, go. Respond now, boom, it's immediate. And as I'll conclude by simply saying that this idea that it's either or has never been true. Never been true. And the great masters knew it. And the great masters practiced all of it. And that's what we do here. And that's how I've been trained, and that's how we train in this temple. So let the gradual be gradual and enjoy it. And let the sudden be sudden, and don't be scared of it. Don't make more of it than it is, but don't fool yourself that it's not there. Each according to its time. The appropriate response is yes. For the sake of all beings throughout space and time, may we realize this and give it away. May it be so. And may we never be state-sponsored. May it be so. You may ring, yes.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Thank you everybody for coming tonight. This will end our stream.